everyone, welcome to Open. I'm Rhina Valentin, your hosting Café con Leche for the next hour, encouraging you to get social with us online. That is, tweet us and follow us on Instagram at BronxNet TV and like us on Facebook at Open BronxNet Television. And of course, while you're there, you can follow moi on Twitter, FB, Instagram, Insta Stories, LinkedIn at Rhina Valentin. So, every 10 years, the United States counts its residents through the census, and it helps determine how money is allocated into communities. The deadline is quickly approaching, and now more than ever, people are being encouraged to complete their census forms. And joining us to tell us more about the importance of filling out the census forms is we welcome New York City 2020 Census Director, Julie Menin. Hi, Julie.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Thank you for being here, and hopefully you can clear some matters up for us, because
Sure.
it's like a stop and go situation with the deadline, the extension, the deadline. And let's just talk about why it's so important that these numbers be allocated within the communities.
So filling out the census is one of the most important things that New Yorkers can do. We're literally fighting for our fair share of over $1.5 trillion that Congress allocates each and every year. These funding allocations are going to cover the next 10 years because the census only occurs once every 10 years. So it's everything for funding for our public schools, our public housing, our health care, our senior centers, roads, tunnels, bridges, Head Start programs, over 300 different programs that New Yorkers really depend on. For every New York household that doesn't complete the census, it's $7,000 that is lost to New York City. And basically that money goes to other states.
So do you happen to know why it's a 10-year process, why it's done every 10 years?
So it's embedded in the Constitution. So this is something that is a constitutional obligation to do a count of every person living in the United States. And it's really for two reasons. One is a funding reason, which I mentioned, but the second, equally important reason is for congressional apportionment. Congressional seats are drawn based on census numbers. So in the mid-1950s, we had 45 members of Congress in the New York State delegation. Today, we have 27. In an undercount, we could have 25 members of Congress. And that really is about power, money, and respect, because it goes to the heart of the matter of making sure that we have the seats in Congress, making sure the Electoral College that we have those seats, so that determines the presidential election. This really, really matters. And then another reason why census data is important is, for example, the New York City Health Department looks at census data when they're making decisions. So when there was a measles outbreak last year in parts of the city, the New York City Health Department looked at that census data and said, okay, we need to order this many vaccines for this many children in these locations. Hopefully one day there'll be a vaccine for COVID. This is not a time for New Yorkers to be invisible. You want to stand up and you want to be counted.
So just to ease anyone who may have concerns with filling out their form, and based on the fact that you're saying that the New York City Health Department would look at the census counts in order to allocate certain numbers, people's information is kept private, right? So let's just be clear for those who are concerned with their immigration status, that it's very important that every individual be counted, and that is not going to be looked into further.
Well, that's exactly right. I wear two hats in the administration. I also have a senior role at the New York City Law Department. We were a plaintiff on the citizenship case, the case where President Trump tried illegally to add a question to the census that hadn't been on in 70 years, asking, are you a U.S. citizen? And we, along with the New York Attorney General and a broad coalition, fought that back and won at the Supreme Court. So I mention that because there is no citizenship question on the census, none. So there is nothing to fear about the census. In addition, Title 13 of the U.S. Code protects the confidentiality of the census and in fact imposes a 5-year prison sentence up to $250,000 fine on any census employee who shares that data. And Title 13 has been sacrosanct. It has not been broken since its inception.
And so this year they made it even easier, right? You're able to fill it out online, and also for just again, this is just for anybody who's concerned about just identifying themselves or identifying how many people reside in one apartment. And none of that
Right.
really matters.
It's completely confidential. The information is not shared with the city of New York. It's not shared with landlords. It's not shared with anyone. But it matters so much to fill the census out. Why would we want to leave $7,000 per household on the table? Why would we want a situation, particularly after COVID, when our New York City economy is in shambles? Why would we leave that money on the table? Why would we hurt our children, our public schools, our seniors, healthcare? All of this matters. And basically, for anyone who says, oh, you know what, I'm not going to be bothered with the census, all you're doing is you're taking that funding that's supposed to be yours and supposed to be your communities and basically sending it to another state. It's unconscionable. We have to get every New Yorker counted. Right now, we're at 60.8% as a city. The Bronx is at 61.6%. So look, we have a long way to go. The census deadline is fast approaching. We need every New Yorker to take the 10 minutes it takes to answer these 10 questions that affect our future for the next 10 years.
That's it, and that's all it takes is 10 minutes. And so before we go, I mean, there's been this controversy with the deadline. Originally, it was going to be October 31st, then they're saying October 5th. Where are we now?
So it's basically in the court. So the deadline was supposed to be October 31st. And then President Trump abruptly announced that he was going to cut it short to September 30th. Why? Because he intentionally wants to undercount immigrant communities and communities of color, because it's largely immigrant communities and communities of color which tend to have lower response rates in most cities across the country. So this is a real attempt to try to disenfranchise largely Democratic cities and move the congressional apportionment largely to red Republican areas across the country. We're New Yorkers. We're not going to be fooled by this. We're not going to be played. We're going to stand up and we're going to be counted. So this is in the courts right now. A lower court in California ruled that the census deadline is going to be extended to October 31st. The Census Bureau is not listening to that, and they're again saying they're going to cut it short, this time to October 5th. It's back in the courts. So the short answer is we don't know yet. Let's assume the worst case is October 5th. Get counted. Stand up and get counted. Go to my2020census.gov. Take the 10 minutes to fill this out for yourself and your family.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for enforcing that. This is a time for us to be united, and that is one of the many ways that your voice will be counted. Thank you, Julie, for being here
Thank
with
you
us.
so much.
And once again, you guys, make sure you fill out your census form today. Go to my2020census.gov. All right, we have to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll hear from one of the organizations that is mobilizing people to fill out their census. Don't go anywhere.